The rain tasted like ash. I could feel it slick on my skin even through the threadbare canvas of my tent, a constant, insidious reminder of the world outside, a world gone wrong. It had been raining for days, maybe weeks. Time had become a blurry, indistinct thing since I started running. They called it the rot. A creeping, insidious blight that started with the plants, turning leaves a sickly, jaundiced yellow before they withered and crumbled to dust. Then it spread to the animals, their fur falling out in clumps, their eyes glazing over with a milky film as they stumbled around, driven mad by some unseen torment. And then it came for us. The first signs were subtle, a persistent cough that wouldn't go away, a strange metallic taste in the mouth, vivid, disturbing dreams. Then the skin started to change, developing a mottled, grayish hue, followed by the appearance of small, pus-filled blisters. The lucky ones died quickly, succumbing to fever and delirium. The others, they changed. I saw it happen in my own town. Neighbors, friends, people I'd known my entire life, transforming into something else. Their bodies contorted, their minds twisted, driven by a primal hunger, a ravenous need to consume. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their eyes vacant, their mouths perpetually open, emitting a guttural, rasping moan that still haunts my dreams. I saw my wife, Sarah, change. I remember the look in her eyes, the confusion and terror as the rot took hold. I remember the moment she turned, the guttural growl that erupted from her throat, the way she lunged at me with a hunger I'd never seen before. I ran. I had to. Now, I'm alone. Lost in the sprawling wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains, trying to outrun the rot, trying to find some semblance of safety in a world that has gone irrevocably mad. The map I clutched in my damp hand was old, faded, and riddled with inaccuracies. It was my grandfather's, passed down to me along with a tattered journal filled with cryptic entries about strange occurrences in these mountains. He had been a geologist, obsessed with the hidden secrets beneath the Earth's surface. I never understood his fascination then, but now, huddled in the darkness of my tent, listening to the incessant rain, I found myself poring over his notes, searching for any clue, any hint of something that could help me survive. The journal spoke of ancient rituals, forgotten gods, and a source of unimaginable power hidden deep within the mountains. He wrote of a place called Blackwood Hollow, a secluded valley said to be cursed, avoided by the locals for generations. He believed it held the key to understanding the strange geological anomalies he had discovered in the area, anomalies that now seemed terrifyingly relevant. I knew it was a risk, maybe even a fool's errand, but I was running out of options. The rot was spreading, pushing me further and further into the wilderness. Blackwood Hollow was a long shot, but it was the only shot I had. The next morning, I packed my meager supplies, slung my grandfather's old rifle over my shoulder, and set off into the rain-soaked forest. The air was thick with the smell of decay, the scent of rotting vegetation and something else, something acrid and metallic that made my stomach churn. The forest was eerily silent, the usual chorus of birdsong replaced by an unsettling stillness. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. The map led me through a labyrinth of overgrown trails, across treacherous ravines, and over steep, rocky ridges. The rain never stopped, soaking me to the bone and making the already difficult terrain even more treacherous. I fell more than once, scraping my knees and elbows, but I kept going, driven by a desperate hope and the gnawing fear that the rot was closing in behind me. As I descended into Blackwood Hollow, the landscape began to change. The trees grew taller, their branches gnarled and twisted, their leaves a sickly, unnatural shade of green. A thick fog clung to the valley floor, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. The air grew colder, and a palpable sense of dread settled over me. This place felt wrong. According to my grandfather's notes, the entrance to the hollow was marked by a peculiar rock formation, a pair of towering boulders that resembled a gateway. It took me hours to find them, hidden deep within the fog, but when I finally did, a shiver ran down my spine. The boulders were covered in strange symbols, carvings that looked ancient and alien, unlike anything I had ever seen before. As I stepped through the gateway, I felt a shift in the air, a subtle change in the atmosphere. The fog seemed to thicken, the temperature dropped even further, and the silence deepened, becoming almost unbearable. I felt like I was entering another world, a place where the laws of nature didn't apply. The path led me deeper into the hollow, winding through a dense forest of skeletal trees. The ground was soft and spongy beneath my feet, covered in a thick layer of decaying leaves. The smell of decay was overwhelming here, mixed with a pungent, earthy odor that made my eyes water. I soon came to a clearing, and in the center of the clearing stood an ancient, dilapidated cabin. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades, its walls crumbling, its roof caved in. It was the only sign of human habitation I had seen since entering the hollow. Cautiously, I approached the cabin. The door was hanging open, creaking ominously in the wind. I hesitated for a moment, my hand trembling as I reached for my rifle. Something told me I shouldn't go inside, but I had come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, I stepped through the doorway. The interior of the cabin was dark and damp, filled with the smell of mildew and decay. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that filtered through the cracks in the walls. The floorboards were rotten and creaked under my weight. The cabin consisted of a single room, sparsely furnished with a rickety table, a broken chair, and a moldy mattress in the corner. On the table, I saw a small, leather-bound book. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for it. The book was a journal, its pages filled with a spidery, illegible handwriting. I struggled to decipher the words, but as I read, a chilling story began to unfold. The journal belonged to a man named Elias Thorne, a hermit who had lived in the cabin over a century ago. He wrote of discovering a dark secret hidden within the hollow, a source of unimaginable power that lay dormant beneath the earth. He believed he could harness this power, use it to achieve immortality and reshape the world in his image. He described performing strange rituals, making sacrifices to appease the ancient gods of the hollow. He wrote of digging deep into the earth, unearthing something that should have remained buried. And then, he wrote of the rot. He claimed that the rot was not a natural phenomenon, but a curse unleashed upon the world as a result of his actions. He had awakened something ancient and malevolent, something that was now spreading across the land, corrupting everything in its path. As I read, I realized that my grandfather had known about this. His obsession with the geological anomalies, his cryptic journal entries, it all pointed to the same thing: the rot was not new. It had happened before. Elias Thorne's final entries were filled with madness and despair. He wrote of being haunted by visions, tormented by the creatures he had unleashed. He claimed that the hollow was no longer safe, that the darkness was closing in on him. The last entry was scrawled in a shaky hand: "They're coming for me. I can hear them in the woods. They want what I have awakened. God forgive me." I slammed the journal shut, my hands trembling. I had to get out of here. This place was cursed. I turned to leave, but as I reached the doorway, I heard a sound. A guttural, rasping moan, coming from the woods. My blood ran cold. I knew that sound. I had heard it too many times. They were here. I gripped my rifle tightly and stepped back into the cabin, slamming the door shut and barricading it with the broken chair. It wouldn't hold for long, but it would buy me some time. I peered through the cracks in the walls, searching for any sign of movement in the fog. The moans grew louder, closer. I could hear the snapping of twigs, the rustling of leaves, the unmistakable sound of something moving through the woods, something hungry. Then, I saw them. Figures emerged from the fog, their bodies contorted and grotesque, their skin a mottled, grayish hue, their eyes vacant and lifeless. They were the infected, the victims of the rot. and they were surrounding the cabin. There were dozens of them, maybe more. They shuffled slowly, their arms outstretched, their mouths open, emitting that chilling, guttural moan. They were drawn to the cabin, drawn to something inside. I raised my rifle and fired. The shot rang out in the stillness of the hollow, shattering the silence. One of the infected stumbled and fell, but the others didn't even flinch. They kept coming, their relentless hunger driving them forward. I fired again and again, each shot taking down another infected, but there were too many. They were closing in, their numbers seemingly endless. I knew I couldn't hold them off for long. The cabin was old and weak, and they were determined to get inside. I had to find another way out. Remembering my grandfather's journal, I looked for a way down. Elias Thorne had written about digging deep into the earth, unearthing something that should have remained buried. Perhaps there was a cellar, a hidden passage, something that could lead me to safety. I frantically searched the cabin, pushing aside the broken furniture, tearing up the rotten floorboards. And then, I found it. Hidden beneath the moldy mattress, I discovered a trapdoor, concealed beneath a layer of dirt and leaves. With trembling hands, I pulled it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down into the earth. Without hesitation, I climbed down the stairs, closing the trapdoor behind me. The darkness was absolute, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unsettling. As I descended, I could still hear the moans of the infected above me, their desperate attempts to break into the cabin. But the sounds were fading, becoming muffled by the earth. The staircase led me to a long, narrow tunnel, carved into the earth. The walls were damp and slimy, and water dripped from the ceiling. I could feel the weight of the earth above me, the oppressive sense of being buried alive. I had no idea where the tunnel led, but I had to keep going. It was my only chance. I stumbled through the darkness, my hand running along the cold, damp walls. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning, leading me deeper and deeper into the earth. After what felt like an eternity, I saw a light ahead. A faint, flickering glow that promised an end to the darkness. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding with hope. As I drew closer, I realized that the light was coming from a large chamber, a cavern hidden deep beneath the hollow. I stepped into the chamber, and I gasped. The cavern was vast and awe-inspiring, its walls lined with shimmering crystals that reflected the light in a dazzling display of color. In the center of the cavern, I saw a pool of water, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. The air in the cavern was thick with energy, a palpable sense of power that made my skin tingle. I felt like I had stumbled into a sacred place, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. Then, I saw it. In the center of the pool, I saw a pulsating mass of organic matter, a grotesque, pulsating heart that throbbed with an unnatural rhythm. It was connected to the walls of the cavern by a network of veins, pulsing with the same eerie light as the pool. I realized then what my grandfather had discovered, what Elias Thorne had awakened. This was the source of the rot, the ancient, malevolent entity that was corrupting the world. The pulsating heart was the source of its power, the nexus of its being. It was the thing Elias Thorne had tried to control, the thing that had ultimately destroyed him. As I stared at the heart, I felt a strange compulsion, a desire to touch it, to connect with it. It was as if the heart was calling to me, beckoning me to join it. I resisted the urge, knowing that it was a trap. The heart was evil, a force of corruption and destruction. I had to destroy it. I raised my rifle, aiming at the pulsating mass. But as I prepared to fire, I heard a voice in my head. "Do not resist," the voice said. "Embrace the change. Become one with us." The voice was seductive, alluring, promising me power, immortality, freedom from pain and suffering. It was the voice of the rot, the voice of the heart. I struggled against the voice, trying to resist its influence. But it was growing stronger, more insistent. I could feel my mind being pulled, my will weakening. I lowered my rifle, my hand trembling. The voice was right. Why resist? Why fight against the inevitable? The world was already lost. Why not embrace the change, become something more? I took a step towards the pool, my eyes fixed on the pulsating heart. I could feel its power drawing me in, filling me with a sense of euphoria. But then, I saw something. Reflected in the shimmering surface of the pool, I saw my own face. But it wasn't my face. It was Sarah's. Her eyes were clear, her skin healthy, her smile radiant. She was beautiful, just like I remembered her. "Come home," she said. "We're waiting for you." Tears streamed down my face. It was a trick, a cruel illusion, but it was enough to break the heart's hold on me. I remembered Sarah, the woman I loved, the woman who had been taken from me by the rot. I remembered her struggle, her fear, her final, desperate plea for help. I couldn't let her die in vain. I had to fight. I had to destroy the heart. I raised my rifle again, my resolve strengthened. The voice in my head screamed in protest, but I ignored it. I fired. The shot pierced the pulsating heart, tearing through its flesh. A wave of energy erupted from the wound, throwing me back against the wall. The cavern began to shake, the crystals shattering and falling from the ceiling. The pool of light flickered and died, plunging the chamber into darkness. The heart thrashed violently, its pulsations growing erratic and weak. The veins that connected it to the walls began to rupture, spewing forth a black, viscous fluid. The voice in my head screamed again, this time in agony. "You fool! You have doomed us all." The heart gave one final, convulsive shudder, and then it went still. The cavern fell silent. The shaking stopped. The darkness deepened. I lay on the ground, gasping for breath, my body battered and bruised. I had destroyed the heart, but I had also unleashed something terrible. I could feel it in the air, a palpable sense of dread. The rot was not just a disease, a curse. It was a consciousness, an entity that had been imprisoned beneath the earth for eons. And now, it was free. I struggled to my feet and stumbled back through the tunnel, desperate to escape the cavern. As I emerged from the tunnel, I saw that the cabin had collapsed. The infected were gone, but the forest was different. The trees were withered and lifeless, their branches bare. The ground was scorched and barren. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur and decay. The rot had spread, consuming everything in its path. But it wasn't just the physical decay that was frightening, it was the awareness I felt now, a sense of being watched, of being a tiny insignificant speck in the face of something vast and malevolent. I knew I had to leave the hollow, to warn others about what I had discovered. But as I turned to go, I saw something in the distance. A figure standing at the edge of the woods. It was Sarah. She was smiling, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. She beckoned me to come closer. I hesitated, knowing that it was a trick. But I couldn't help myself. I had to see her, to talk to her one last time. I walked towards her, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drew closer, I saw that she wasn't alone. Behind her, I saw a crowd of figures, their bodies contorted and grotesque, their skin a mottled, grayish hue, their eyes vacant and lifeless. They were the infected. And they were all smiling. Sarah reached out her hand to me. "Welcome home," she said. "We've been waiting for you." I stopped, my blood running cold. I finally understood. The rot wasn't just a disease. It was a collective consciousness, a hive mind that had spread across the world, assimilating everything in its path. And now, it wanted me. I wanted to run, to escape, but I was paralyzed with fear. Sarah's hand was still outstretched, her smile unwavering. I looked into her eyes, and I saw something else. I saw a flicker of recognition, a brief moment of clarity. "Run," she whispered. "Please, run." Then, the light in her eyes faded, and her smile returned, cold and lifeless. I turned and ran, faster than I had ever run before. I didn't look back. I knew that they were behind me, pursuing me with their relentless hunger. I ran until I collapsed, exhausted and breathless, in a clearing far from the hollow. I lay there for hours, listening to the sounds of the forest, waiting for them to find me. But they didn't come. As the sun began to rise, I realized that I was alone. The infected were gone, and so was the rot. But something was different. I felt a strange connection to the forest, a sense of belonging that I had never felt before. I could hear the whispers of the trees, the songs of the birds. I could feel the earth beneath my feet, the pulse of life flowing through the ground. I realized then that the rot hadn't been destroyed. It had been absorbed. Its consciousness, its collective will, had been integrated into the natural world, becoming one with the forest. And I was now a part of it. The part of me that had resisted, the part that remembered Sarah and the world that was, that part was gone. I was something new, something more. I stood up and walked into the forest, my steps light and sure. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer alone. I was home. I looked up and saw a flash of grayish skin. I smiled. And as I turned into the woods, I realized, I hadn't run from the rot. I had become it.